Hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 70 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we're discussing chapter 69 of A Game of Thrones. That's Tyrion 9.
So here's the deal. We're going to chat about the chapter. We're going to try not to spoily. We're not going to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully, we're going to provide you with some entertainment while we do this.
We'll summarise what's happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll help you, particularly if you're not reading along with us. How are you, McKelly?
Better today.
Why are we recording a day late, McKelly?
I needed a day of mourning after the embarrassing debacle that the Steelers put on Monday afternoon at between 5 and 8:30 p.m.
For listeners in the future, this is a complicated story to retell because it involves COVID and football and things like that. But basically, the Steelers were on for a perfect season until they lost.
Yes.
In prime time for all to see.
Against a 4-7 team. Mm-hmm. But, the Washington football team did get 10 days to prepare and plan for a Steelers game, and the Steelers had 4 days to cobble something together for a game against the Washington football team. Right. But no excuses will be made.
Again, that's another COVID aspect to this. So future listeners will be like, wow, must have been a crazy time.
Yep, that it was. But the Steelers made enough mistakes to hang themselves, and that they did.
I will reassure you on the pod, as I've reassured you in person. No 16-0 team has ever won the Super Bowl.
Right?
You've avoided that.
The Dolphins in 72
no regular
won
season,
14-0
team. Yes. Do not come at me with your details. I am correct with what I say.
Right.
So you've guaranteed victory, I think.
That's what it is. We play like we have the past 2 weeks. Where the only victory we're going to see is earlier round first round draft pick next spring.
Well, since a lot of our listeners are international, they won't have a clue what any of this means.
Nope.
None of it. The Steelers are a American football team who are, well, I mean, they're one of the powerhouses, but they've had a lean few years.
2 years we've missed the playoffs. I don't really get involved.
Oh, you don't?
They don't consult me one way or the other. They should, those buggers.
To me, that's a one-way street. I mean, like, when I talk about my soccer team back home, I say we all the time.
Me too.
If I am part of it.
I always said we and never thought about it till my senior year in college. A roommate of mine said, "Why do you always say we? You don't have anything to do with the team." And I was like, it's because I bleed along with them.
Exactly. The players only play there for an average of 2 or 3 years.
Right.
You are the consistency. You are the. In England, we have a candy called Rock, which is it's got letters all the way down it, all the way through the inside.
Okay.
And you're the letters
right
through
the
Steelers. Yeah.
4.5 decades of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. Can I tell you a slight? Well, it's not funny in the slightest, but it's utterly depressing. It's utterly depressing. So in England, for the first time last weekend, they've had fans back in the stadiums after the lockdown.
Okay.
Only limited numbers. They all have to sit like 10 seats apart, kind of thing. So it's very, very sparse. But this whole time, again, for listeners from the future, the pandemic has coincided with the sort of Black Lives Matter movement. And in England, the players at the beginning of the game have all taken a knee for just for 5 seconds as a sort of Black Lives Matter thing, just to sort of give solidarity to that notion. And of course, it's been done in empty stadiums until this weekend. And there's a team in London called Millwall who are renowned for having the worst fans.
Oh boy.
Their own fans sing "Everybody Hate Us." That's their song.
They wear it as a badge of honor that everybody hates them. Okay.
And their team is ethnically diverse. And when both teams took a knee at the opening whistle, the fans booed. And there was only like 200 of them there. You could like pick them out in the crowd. It wasn't like a mob scene. It was like, you individuals sitting there are booing and we can see you.
Right. There's no anonymity there. They can literally see your face. Oh, man.
So, yeah, that was pretty embarrassing all around. Anyway, let's get on with the show.
Let's do that.
Quick recap of what Tyrion was up to last time we saw him. Last we saw of Tyrion, he was just about surviving the battle on the Green Fork, which shouldn't have been that close. Robb Stark had only sent a token force under the command of Roose Bolton, but Tywin Lannister, Tyrion's father, had seen fit to station Tyrion and his mountain clansmen in the most dangerous part of the field. Tyrion had acquired the services of Shae, the prostitute, and was still hanging out with the disreputable sellsword Bronn. Why don't we give them the summary of this chapter?
All right. Tywin's host is back at the inn at the Crossroads. They've been marching hard, leaving injured soldiers to die so as to not be slowed. But it's all in vain. A survivor of Jaime's host from Riverrun has brought news of Jaime's capture and the breaking of the siege at Riverrun. Tywin's senior lords are gathered, including Tyrion and Kevan.
Many aristocrats have been killed or captured, and worse still, Edmure Tully has been freed. They were holding him, the people besieging Riverrun were holding him, and he's been freed by Robb Stark's forces. The imbalance of captives gets worse for the Lannisters. Tywin is dangerously silent, as his advisors pointlessly bleat and rehash the news. Tywin's only comment is, "They have my son," which somewhat irks Tyrion.
Sir Harry Swift, for whom Tyrion has scant regard, suggests that they are defeated and must sue for peace. Tyrion breaks his wine glass and suggests that, courtesy of Joffrey's rashness, the peace of the realm lies in similar pieces. All suggestions are undercut by Ned's demise. Eventually, Tywin snaps and throws everyone out but his brother and his son.
Tywin says that Tyrion is right about Joffrey. Tyrion tries to be even-handed, saying that he'd committed a few follies of his own at Joffrey's age. Tywin says that we can at least be grateful that he hasn't married a whore. Cold, Tywin. Very, very cold. He informs the other two that Renly Baratheon has married Margery Tyrell and claimed the throne. The Tyrells have bent the knee to Renly. Cersei has commanded her father to King's Landing to defend the Iron Throne.
Joffrey has not been told of Renly's move, as it is feared he will immediately lead an army into the field. Eyebrows are raised at what that army would entail. The Gold Cloaks? Even if they were to succeed, they could well return home to King's Landing to find Stannis on the throne. There's no real news of Stannis, just some rumors and guesses. Tywin decides that they will continue south to Harrenhal, which is large enough to hold his host, and is a defendable location. Tywin orders raiding parties to torch the Riverlands.
Tywin suggests that Tyrion's mountain men might like some of that action, but Tyrion wants to keep them with him. Tywin tells him to get them under control then, because Tyrion is being sent to King's Landing to rule. Tywin lists the stupidities and questions the worth of the small council. Tyrion asks, "Why me?" His father replies, "You are my son." But Tyrion cannot see the olive branch. All he hears is his father giving Jaime up for dead. Tywin dismisses him with one last command. Do not take the whore to King's Landing. Tyrion goes to Shae and tells her that that is exactly where they're going.
Aha! Take that, father.
I guess so. So, by the way, I really enjoyed this chapter.
Yeah,
Just
I did too.
FYI.
It's a good chapter.
This one a lot.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of the chapters I enjoy a lot are the ones where you get sort of like a lot of exposition about things that have been going on.
Yep.
Because the whole first half of this chapter is basically a messenger from Riverrun recounting everything that's happened at Riverrun, which is nice because there's a lot of things happen there. And so to get it in the summary from a messenger makes it a lot, keeps these books nice and short.
Right. Keeps it under a mere 900 pages. Yeah, you're right. I mean, this scene basically is just sitting at a table discussing things. So, there's not a lot of actual action going on, but you get a lot of really interesting and useful information. Yeah. So the messenger recounts what happened at the Whispering Woods, which is, of course, where Jaime was taken captive, and the subsequent battles around Riverrun.
It's basically a domino effect, as you might expect. Without Jaime, Riverrun is quickly freed. We told you that the army, Jaime's army, had to be split into three,
right.
And so Robb's army was able to take care of them in thirds quite easily. And then most newsworthy is the freeing of Edmure Tully, who was being who's seems a little bit strange, but I guess it makes sense that they kept him right next to Riverrun after they captured him.
Yeah.
Where else would you keep him?
I guess you could have sent him with a guard back to the Westerlands, Casterly Rock or Lannisport. I assume Casterly Rock.
Yeah. But because he was there and the siege was lifted, they were able to free him. So Edmure Tully was probably the highest value captive that the Lannisters had now that they decapitated Ned.
Right. I mean, Sansa, I'm sure, holds a lot of value to Cat, but as far as battle strategy goes, maybe not as much as the future Lord of Riverrun.
Yes, quite. The only parts of Jaime's armies that seem to escape are a band of sellswords who weren't exactly loyal, and when they saw the battle going against them, they scarpered quickly.
Turned sides. And Kevin, he kind of chides Jaime for trusting the sellsword, but Tyrion, of course, is doing the same thing with Bronn, but I think Tyrion made it pretty clear in the chapter when they were making their way through the Mountains of the Moon that he gets that Bronn is hanging out with him because he is his meal ticket. So
yeah, and I mean, presumably Jaime's smart enough to know what a sellsword is as well.
Right.
You just when you hire a band of sellswords, you have to make sure that you keep the upper hand.
Yes. Yeah.
If you don't keep the upper hand, they're gonna flip.
Yeah, that's very true, and they did.
Yeah.
But, so Harry's Swift, which is a tough to get that double S in there. Harry's Swift. He's apparently not familiar with Riverrun because he is perplexed why Jaime would have split his army into three. What would he be thinking to do this?
I think Harry Swift is a character that's put in there to allow us to have a little bit more exposition so that we as readers can understand it.
Right. He asks the dumb, obvious questions that
exactly
you need to have asked. But we knew because Brendan Blackfish Tully explained in I think it was just the previous Cat chapter about the issues with sieging Riverrun. Because, as we mentioned, because we brought up Pittsburgh at this point, Riverrun sits at the confluence of the Tumblestone coming from coming down from the northern part of the castle, and the Red Fork coming from the southern part of the castle. They meet right there. And then so they make two parts of a triangle, and if there's trouble for Riverrun, they open these gates that flood a large moat from the western side and basically make Riverrun an island castle.
Yeah.
So if you're going to siege it, you got to have someone on the northern bank of the Tumblestone, the southern bank of the Red Fork, and then in that western part between the two rivers. Quite.
Well done. That was good explanation.
By the way, Harry Swift is the father-in-law to Kevin Lannister.
That's right.
His daughter Tyrion, Dorna is Kevin's wife.
And Tyrion kind of mocks him. Tyrion's thoughts mock him for a bit like the only thing he ever achieved in life was getting his daughter married to a Lannister.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The messenger who survived and made it to the Crossroads and is explaining this stuff to everyone in the room. He says the attack was a surprise. They didn't see it coming. That Mark Piper had been raiding their supply train with roughly 50 men, and Jaime left to go deal with it. And they were under the impression that the Stark host was on the east bank of the Green Fork, marching south. So they didn't really think they had anything to worry about from this large host that descended upon them. So it turns out Brendan Tully was right. They did either shoot down all the birds or kill all of the outriders, because no word got back to them about any kind of plans that the Starks were up to. But so he says that Mark Piper had been raiding with roughly 50 men, and that Jaime went off to deal with those 50 men, but he then also says he brought most of his cavalry, which feels like quite the excessive force to take care of 50 men.
Yeah, I mean,
I know you want to squash them, but
right, you've got them. You might as well use them. You know, they're not expecting Riverrun to sort of like suddenly burst out and start fighting them. So you might as well use the cavalry anyway. You know.
Yeah, I guess. Just seems like maybe just 200 would have done it. You know.
Yeah, but actually thinking about that. You also don't know. I mean, it could be a trap. You know, if Mark Piper keeps raiding with 50 men, there might be like 400 men there. And so if you go with 200, you might get surprised.
Solid point. Turns
if
out...
If there are 15,000 waiting for you, you're in trouble no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how that went down.
So as the messenger describes things, Flemont Brax begins to sniff that bad news is coming his way because his father tries to cross one of the rivers on a little pontoon in his full armour, and sure enough, he sinks to the bottom without a trace, so his father died.
Yeah. And...
no tears for Flemont Brax, though. He keeps going as if nothing's happened.
Yeah, Tyrion, the messenger trying to soften the blow to Sir Flemont, says he was very gallant, meaning his father Andros was very gallant, and Tyrion thinks if that's gallantry, I'll take cowardice every time. I hope he felt really gallant as he was being pulled under the water by his metal plate armor. But, you know, Flemont Brax is another kind of has a little bit of a mixed interest character because his wife is a Frey. Moria Frey is his wife. So, I mean, clearly he's a lord, from a house in the Riverland, so I'm sure he's got his allegiance to the Lannisters, but, you know, he does have a Frey wife who is...
And now the Freys have elevated him to lordship, so, you know...
Right, yeah, there you go.
At least, you know, they're partly to blame for it, anyway.
Right, yeah.
I mean, if you're trying to see the glass as being half full...
Right, the silver lining is he is now Lord Flemont Brax. So
the messenger reports that the western camp was overrun and Robb Stark himself led the charge, and Grey Wind was at his side, chewing on horses. And you have something to say about this?
It just surprises me a little because in order to get to this messenger said he was in the western camp, the one between the two rivers.
Right.
In order to get to them, they had to ford the Tumblestone at some point, which is the nearest ford is quite a ways upriver from Riverrun, of the nearest ford of the Tumblestone, and it's also a significantly swifter flowing river than the more placid Red Fork. So they must have gone quite a ways out of their way to get across. But, you know, they had to do it, I guess. So,
or they built a bridge. I mean, like if it's kind of if it's a sort of mountain stream, it might have a sort of like a narrow,
maybe
steep valley, and you might be able to build a sort of like a bridge to get a sizable force across without too much problem.
Like at a narrow point.
At a narrow point, yeah.
Okay, yeah, could be. They certainly had to get across it because they couldn't just attack Riverrun from one side. They needed to get at least two of the sides.
Well, but did they though? Because I mean, if the rivers are truly impassable, you could just take out one side and then sort of like just point across the river threateningly, like,
right.
We're coming for you next. Do like a big eeny, meeny, miny, mo between the two.
Yeah.
See which one runs first.
I'm betting it's the one with the most sellswords.
Sellswords, yes. We will hire sellswords.
We'll pay double what they're paying.
So now the Lannisters' host is basically Tywin's army, which has continued to dwindle from his hard march back south again, from the Battle of the Green Fork.
Yeah, and they're in quite a pickle.
Oh yeah, because they can't go north because basically if you go north, you either try to go across the river at the Twins, that's close to them now, or you try and keep going north and then you hit Moat Cailin and that's close to them as well. Yep. So there's nothing north. East of them would be the Vale of Arryn, and there's no warmth for the Lannisters there. They could flee back to the west, but they'd have to go via Riverrun.
Right.
Riverrun is on the way back to Casterly Rock.
Yeah, that's pretty much closed off to them now.
Yeah. They could head south, but now reports are coming from the south that the Reach and the Stormlands are in open rebellion against them too.
Yeah.
The Reach being the home of the Tyrells. The Tyrells have now plighted they've pledged themselves to Renly.
Right.
Renly has claimed the throne, so they're going to fight for this, clearly.
Luckily, there is a silver lining, and that is that Jaime is Warden of the East. So, as that is such a useful position, he can simply say, I need the veil to stand down and let us enter.
Yes. From his cell,
right.
Cat gives him a raven and a piece of parchment. Strange that you're writing to my sister. No, don't worry.
I'm sure this will go over well. I know my sister.
Yeah, so Tywin, sort of like weighing up the pros and cons of where to go, he thinks they'll just head south and just hide out at Harrenhal, basically, which they can defend,
right.
And then, I guess, hope that the situation improves somehow.
Yeah, I was wondering about the Vale of Arryn, and I wondered if Lysa knew what a vulnerable position the Lannisters were in, if she might
come down the hill,
dare come beyond the Bloody Gate. If she knew, like, we could take them out with one good push here, if she might be moved to do so. But she doesn't seem to be moved to move at all.
Yeah. So while the messenger is questioned about how all this came to pass, the messenger mentions that none of the scouts reported that this large force was there. The best intelligence they had was Mark Piper and his 50 men. Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, Sandor the Hound Clegane's brother, voices some nice thoughts. He says that any scout that comes back without seeing anything is not worth his eyes, so those eyes are plucked out and given to the next scout to carry, because then he'll have 4 eyes.
Right.
And if I was
so forth.
Oh yeah, if I was scout number 2 or 3, I would definitely find something.
Right. There were people everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
There's others. There's whites. Run away. Speaking of Sir Gregor Clegane, Tywin also mentions that Sir Beric Dondarrion and Thoros of Myr are still harassing them. So they're still out fighting the good fight that Ned sent them out on his day on the Iron Throne, when he told them to go.
They'll eventually bring Gregor back to justice.
Eventually. They're going to keep trying until they get the chance.
Yeah.
But Tywin does, so he sends everybody off. He's irked. He's had enough. He sends everybody off except for Tyrion and his brother Kevin. And he says to Tyrion, you're right with Ned.
In fact, apart from saying they have my son at the start of the chapter, he doesn't speak another word until he throws them all out, right?
Right.
All of this conversation is just, Tywin is just sitting there silently listening to all this garbage.
Yeah, Tyrion was actually thinking he is a pretty silent guy unless he has something to say, but he can see sweat beating on his forehead, and he can see in his eyes the tension building there. But when he clears the room, he tells Tyrion, you're right, with Ned, we might have been able to make peace with the North in Riverrun, and in doing so, it would have given us time and the opportunity to deal with the Baratheon brother situation.
Right.
So, if only Joff had allowed him,
Exactly. That would be a great outcome at this point, because things are bad for Lannister. You make a trade of prisoners, Jaime for Ned, and then you say, and the other part of this is, we leave the Riverlands and you leave the Riverlands too. You head back north. I think everyone would walk away from that happy.
I think so.
And then you can protect the Iron Throne from the Baratheons.
Right. I think so. If Joff had allowed Ned to take the Black, at least, Tywin could have then used his persuasion over Joff to get him to recant.
Yeah.
And, might have had a deal here. But now, with Ned gone, they're basically surrounded by enemies on all sides.
Yep.
But Tyrion does say something I thought was funny. He says, take heart, father. At least Rhaegar Targaryen is still dead. And I think that was in reference to the rumor that Bran mentioned in Bran 6, which I think was chapter 53, that there was a rumor that Rhaegar Targaryen had returned from the dead and is gathering a host of ancient heroes on Dragonstone. Which, I mean, would make matters worse if that was true.
That's true, yes. So perhaps Tyrion is being a little bit loose and free with his good news.
Right.
Take heart, father. I believe that Rhaegar Targaryen is still dead. Who knows?
Everything else has gone wrong, but I'm still sure that this one's not.
Yeah. So, so Tywin is sending Tyrion to King's Landing. It seems to be a good fit. The thought is that he'll rule the realm, bring Joffrey to heel, and he's definitely suited to those two things. I mean, he's clearly got leadership potential, and he clearly likes to abuse his nephew.
We've seen it. Yep, we definitely know that. Although, having seen what we've seen, I'm a little bit unsure if anyone, except for maybe Tywin, can control Joff at the moment. He's just so high on power, and so Joffrey.
Yeah, it's actually going to be tricky for Tyrion.
Yeah.
It's because he is going to try and abuse him, and Joffrey has his Kingsguard, and this might come to a head.
Right. I think Tyrion certainly has the intelligence and the capabilities to get down there and make some good adjustments, and but the only issue is, will he be able to do so?
Yeah. It's a backhanded compliment from Tywin because he's revealing for the first time trust and faith in his younger son.
Right.
But presumably that was always there. But it's also a kind of horrible calculus that he's basically writing Jaime off as gone.
Yeah, that
Can't
doesn't
see
sit
a way
well
to
with
get
Tyrion
Jaime
either.
back. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now he's actually investing in Tyrion as his son and heir.
I think he might be Tywin, that is, might be jumping the gun a little bit. I mean, yeah, the North is angry, no doubt, but he has to remember that the Lannisters do still have Sansa, and they think they have Arya. The North thinks they have Arya, so they're probably not going to kill him while they have the daughters.
Yes, but his problem, the problem that Tywin perceives, I think, is that he knows now that they're not in any position to win militarily against the North now.
Right. Not as things currently stand.
Yeah, they are in big trouble militarily. With the benefit of Harrenhal's walls, he can probably hold out against the siege against Robb Stark, but not win anything. And the problem that's compounded by the fact that he can't see any diplomatic way to get Jaime back. Because he's got nothing to offer in return.
Right.
Sansa just doesn't cut it.
Right. I agree. But Tyrion, he has mixed feelings about this whole thing. On one hand, he admits to himself that, well, no, he doesn't admit, because he says he's more pleased than he would admit. So, by definition, he's not admitting to it.
I think that's an admission of sorts.
Right. But he's also wondering, though, if he's being left to hold the left again, like he did in the Battle of
interesting.
The Green Fork. Is he being put in a compromising position in a position where he's being set up to fail?
But you know what? I'm not sure that's true. Actually, I think. Well, obviously, the larger part of the sort of loyalist Lannister military force is up here in the Riverlands. In fact, just Tywin's army, basically. But King's Landing is pretty defensible.
Right.
It has high walls. It's
surrounded by water on two sides.
But it doesn't have a military per se.
Right.
It has the gold cloaks, but they're not really the same.
I agree.
They beat up urchins. They don't fight people who are similarly armed.
Right. It's probably not even many of them that are knights. Probably none of them, I wouldn't think, would be knights.
Yeah. So, Tywin is absolutely scathing about... So, what I'm saying is, yes, it does feel like you could be putting him in... Tyrion might be being sent into the dangerous part of the thing, but Tywin must care about King's Landing, because that's where his daughter and his 3 grandchildren,
Right.
and now his remaining son, are all going to be.
Yeah.
So you can't give that up as the left side of the line.
Right. I think maybe he's
It's the
thinking
realm.
more of like, am I being set up to be the scapegoat for this? Like, you get down there, and then they're like, oh, Tyrion screwed this all up. You know,
Right.
It was during your rule that it all fell apart.
Right. And also sort of use that to sort of whitewash Joffrey's sins in some way.
Right, yes.
So 3 years from now, you oust Tyrion as being hopeless, and Joffrey, who hopefully has been conditioned to be a bit better, steps in as the noble king.
Yes,
and
something like that.
You forget all of the earlier crimes. Yeah.
Like a reset button on Joffrey's rule.
Yeah. So Tywin is absolutely scathing about what's going on in King's Landing. Particularly the elevation of Janos Slynt to be Lord of Harrenhal. He said, Harrenhal used to be the seat of kings, and now it's been given to a butcher, the son of a butcher.
Yeah. And I had suggested when it happened, in the chapter when it happened, that I thought maybe the honor was being bestowed upon Janos Slynt to get what they wanted out of Janos Slynt, but they never actually intended for him to have it long term. It was more of a
Tywin
carrot.
Yeah. Tywin does not intend for him to have it. He actually says at one point he will never see this place.
Yeah, and Cersei may have known that, I mean, she may have realized, oh yeah, this isn't going to happen, but Janos Slynt doesn't know this isn't going to happen, so...
But then, I mean, how much do you need to give the man? I mean, gold would have worked.
Right, yeah.
You don't need to give him this. You certainly don't need to give him a seat on the small council. Unless he's a strategic genius, as well as being the son of a butcher. He doesn't need a seat on the small council.
Right? Yeah. They gave him, it seems like, Ned was bribing him with 5,000 gold coins, which is a lot of money.
Right. But since the 5,000 gold coins were being carried to him by Peter Baelish,
right,
he could have told them these were from the Queen.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, he could have been. This 1,000 gold coins is from Ned Stark.
1,000? I'm not doing it for that. How about I throw in Harrenhal?
Done.
Yes, Tywin's also mad about the Hound being made a Kingsguard.
Yeah.
He says that you feed your dog bones from the table. You don't elevate it to the highest table. Yeah,
he has an issue with the Hound as a member of the Kingsguard, but he has Gregor Clegane, the Hound's older brother, leading men under the Lannister name here and there. I guess the difference is that Gregor's dirty work is done on the down low, and the Kingsguard is a prestigious, highly visible position.
Right, I think that's the problem. I don't think he has a problem with the Hound being like he is.
Right, the personal protector.
Yeah.
But of course, we know that Sandor Clegane is much deeper than would first meet the eye. He has a soft, protective spot for Sansa Stark.
Did you say Gregor or Sandor?
I don't know. With me with names.
You meant Sandor. Yeah, you got it. I heard Gregor, so I was like, he's got a soft spot? Who for?
I don't think Gregor has a soft spot for anything.
Tywin also complains about the ousting of Barristan Selmy. Sure, he was old, but he brought gravitas and experience to the small council, which are sadly lacking now.
Yeah, it's just, a lot of it is, the same optics, only in reverse, as the Hound being elevated to the Kingsguard. Barristan Selmy, he might have been older, but he still had prestige and, respect in the realm.
Yeah, and then lastly, I mean, basically he's going through the small council at this point. Baelish, Pycelle, and Varys. What kind of counsel are they giving the young king when he lurches from one folly to the next?
Yeah.
I think Tywin probably needs to see it for himself. They are just trying to stay alive.
Right, yeah. We saw it on the pulpit in Arya's chapter. We know at least Cersei, Varys, and the High Septon, who's not a member of the small council, but we know that those three went to Joffrey after he said, bring me Ned's head to Sir Illian Payne. They were trying to get him to change his mind, but they had no luck. And It seems like there was previous conversations about this as well, because he said, my mother wants me to let Ned take the black. So, people had tried to advise him. He just ignored it all and jumped to another folly. So Cersei's keeping Joff in the dark about Renly because she's afraid that he's going to take the gold cloaks and ride south. And we know from the last Sansa chapter that he was already planning on riding out with the gold cloaks for Riverrun. And, we had talked about this in the Sansa chapter and it's basically stated in this chapter what a terrible idea that would be. He rides off with basically the people who are there to protect the throne and the King's Landing, and there's no one left to protect the throne or King's Landing, so...
Right. And he's not likely to win.
No.
With basically an armed police force at his back. He's going to lose,
Whether he leads them against Robb or Renly, he'll be woefully outnumbered. Back in Ned 13, which was chapter 47, he told Peter Baelish that Ned had to have the gold cloaks because they were 2,000 strong. Well, that might be a nice force inside the walls of King's Landing, but out on a battlefield when he's up against armies of 10 plus thousand with real leaders,
right?
This gold cloaks would be led by Jaina Slint and Joffrey Baratheon. I mean, I think Mark Piper's 50 raiders might be able to take.
So we finally do get news of the Baratheon boys, which we've been waiting for. There's only rumours and hints of what Stannis is up to, but Renly has married Margery Tyrell, who will remember they were trying to marry Margery to Robert. They were trying to get Robert to set Cersei aside and marry Margery.
Yep.
And Renly has claimed the throne, which is a stretch. I mean, Renly is the youngest brother of three. Right. The eldest brother has died. The eldest brother's son is not the eldest brother's. So that surely means that Stannis Baratheon, the second brother, is now the king of the Seven Kingdoms.
If you accept the fact that Ned was telling the truth and Joffrey is not Robert's heir, how that you might find that that Renly is better suited to be king, but you can't possibly make the argument that he's got the claim to be king.
Right.
So.
Unless Dragonstone is entirely cut off forever in some way from the rest of the Seven Kingdoms.
Right.
Stannis is the king. So, Loras Tyrell and his father, Mace Tyrell, so that Mace is Margery and Loras' father, have pledged fealty to Renly. Now, all the way through this book, we've been talking about the Tyrells as being wealthy and comfortable, and the last thing they would want to do is rock the boat.
Right.
Okay, I don't know anything.
First chance they get, they're rocking that boat.
I was projecting my own thoughts onto them because apparently they just couldn't wait to get rid of the Joffrey from the throne.
Yeah, but we last chapter, when it was mentioned that Cersei still, well, actually it wasn't last chapter, that was a Daenerys chapter, but the Sansa chapter, when it was announced, when Joffrey mentioned that my mother still wants me to marry you to Sansa, and we were saying why, it would make much more sense to marry him to someone like Margery Tyrell. It certainly does make more strategic sense. The Reach is fertile and can field a large army, plus it comes with the Red Wine fleet, and don't forget, the Red Wine twins were, at least in the last Arya chapter, still in King's Landing. So the Tyrells pledging their fealty to Renly, and the Red Wines having fealty to the Tyrells, does put the Red Wine twins, Horys and Hobber, in a bit of a sticky situation if they're still in King's Landing.
Right. They, of course, might have been sent a raven to say, come on back home, right. We're forming
before this word gets out, we need you to get out of town fast.
Exactly, yeah. So, Loras Tyrell and Renly Baratheon were friends, and so maybe that's the sort of key, is that they were plotting to get Margery to be the new queen. Maybe their friendship has led this to come to a head, and Loras has got sway over his father,
Right, yeah, that's what it depends on how much sway Loras, who I believe is the youngest son, has over his father Mace. If he doesn't have a lot of sway, then this then this is a different situation. If he has a lot of sway over him and says, no, we got to back this guy. This is the guy. This is our king,
Yeah. It is an interesting calculus, though, for the Tyrells, because you're absolutely right. If they are sort of semi-ambitious, sending Margery to King's Landing to marry Joffrey is a simpler route than marrying her off to Renly and then trying to win King's Landing. First against the Lannisters, and then against a very irate older brother.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, because of what Renly's done here, it very much tears the allegiance within the Stormland into 3 different threads, because Stannis is the eldest, a Baratheon. He's the oldest living Baratheon now, but Renly is the Lord of Storm's End, and Joff, and I'll put in finger quotes here, is the son of Robert and the current king. So Stormland houses would have to decide, who are we backing here? Do we back Robert's son? Do we believe the rumor that he's not Robert's son? He's also the king?
I guess you could at least just split that into Joffrey versus the brothers for now. Because, I mean, you'd hope the brothers wouldn't fight each other before they got rid of Joffrey.
Well, yeah. So that was another thought I had, because Kevin then, very next line, says, these are grave tidings. He's referring to Renly claiming the throne and gaining the Tyrell support. And it depends on how these Baratheons, what they're going to do, because it's not necessarily grave tidings. If Renly weds Margery, rouses a host from the Reach on Stannis' behalf, that would definitely have been very bad. Very bad. Yes,
bad news,
very, very bad.
Yeah.
But since he's not the heir and Stannis is, Renly's claim is, as we just discussed, obviously false. And it's doubtful that Stannis is going to just be, sit by and be passed over by his younger brother. So it might divide the Baratheon forces and weaken their position, as opposed to making a stronger, unified force.
Yeah, although I will say, Stannis has sat around and done nothing for the entire book. So maybe that is in his character, in fact. He misses the days of the siege, and he's just reliving it by not doing it.
People keep wondering why he's eating leather bootstraps. And we have a steak ready for you.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So the good news, the hope for the Lannisters is that the Baratheons do get into a fight against one another. The fear would be they'll take care of Joffrey first and then squabble over which one of them takes the throne.
That would be the logical option.
And certainly, if I'm a if I'm a Baratheon loyalist and I'm not sure what's going on, I just fight for Renly or Stannis, whichever one I hear from. I go fight for them, help them win the throne, and then if the other one ends up on the throne, I'm fine with that. It doesn't bother me.
Right? Yeah. From the bannerman perspective, yeah, I agree. But Tywin tells Kevin and Tyrion that he felt from the beginning that Stannis is a greater danger than the rest combined, which is pretty high praise for Stannis, who's done nothing but sit on Dragonstone thus far. He's done nothing, but still he's considered by Tywin, who's a pretty savvy,
he's shrewd.
He can't possibly have a bigger army than Renly, because Renly's got the reach, and even if they split the Stormland 50-50, Renly would still have the bigger army. So why does he find Stannis to be the bigger threat? I think it's not just the claim itself. It's not just the fact that he has the more legitimate claim. I think it's that Stannis' prowess as a military leader and strategist. And he also has a record of success against very heavy odds. Remember, he, in his early 20-ish years, he held Storm's End from the Tyrells and Redwynes during the siege of Storm's End, which almost got him, but Ned came and lifted the siege just in time. He also took Dragonstone after the sack of King's Landing. Now, there was a huge storm that helped smash the Dragonstone fleet to bits. That's how Daenerys got her name, Daenerys Stormborn Targaryen. There you go.
That very storm. There you go.
So he was helped by Mother Nature, but he also used that a genius trap for a major defeat of the Iron Fleet in the Greyjoy Rebellion, and then he went on to subdue Great Wick in the Greyjoy Rebellion. So he's got a record of being pretty savvy.
But in that little description, you raised a red flag in there, which is that he still harbours a huge grudge against the Tyrells and the Redwynes.
Oh, yes.
We've heard before that he's never forgiven them. And now all of a sudden his brother has sided with them. Smartly. I mean, Renly's not going to win the throne with half of the Stormlands. He needs supporters, but he's chosen the supporters that his brother hates the most. It might be difficult for Stannis to team up with Renly.
I guess
because of that,
if the crown was at stake, he might be willing to mend fences. But
well, we'll see. We haven't met the man.
Good point.
Excellent. So I love this chapter. It was really good. So, to background, Tywin instructs Kevan to order 3 groups out to burn the Riverlands. They're to be led by Gregor Clegane, Amory Lorch, and Vargo Hoat, respectively. We know Gregor, we've met him before, but Amory Lorch is new. He's a Lannister bannerman. The Lorch signal is a black manticore on a red background. He's reputed to have been partly responsible for the murder of Rhaegar Targaryen and Elia Martell's children. Because I'm kind of show-oriented and have been for a while, I'd lost track of this. I thought that it was all Gregor Clegane's doing. But the rumour is that Gregor killed the baby boy, Aegon, but it was Amory Lorch who killed the daughter, Rhaenys.
Yeah.
So he's involved in that. So, yes, he sounds like a good candidate for going out and killing innocent villagers. Sounds like the kind of guy who might follow through on that.
Yeah, he's got the experience for the job.
Yeah. And Vargo Hoat is the leader of the Brave Companions, who are a band of sellswords. So I hope Kevan was warning Tywin about the danger of sellswords. They're from Essos. They were recruited by Tywin. They are infamous for their cruelty and depravity. Again, ideal candidates for this mission. Vargo is not the best of them. May not be the worst, but certainly not the best. Their sigil is a goat with bloody horns, and Vargo has a reputation for torturing and mutilating his captives.
Yes. Now, I wonder if when Kevan was admonishing Jaime for his decision to trust the Tyrashi sellsword that turned sides, I wonder if he was looking at Tywin when he was doing that, like, don't trust sellswords.
Or if he wasn't looking at Tywin, but Tywin was looking at him. Like, oh, really? So in comparison with the television show, it's condensed, but it's very much captured. Most of the dialogue is given over to Tyrion and Kevan talking back and forth. But you get the more stupid comments as like voiceover as you look at Tywin's face getting more and more angry. So you have this sort of voiceover discussion between idiots as you're looking at Tywin's face.
I could definitely see that happening.
When Tywin throws everybody out, he throws out Kevan too. He only keeps Tyrion in the room.
Oh, okay.
A fair bit of the exposition is dropped in favour of brevity. There's no talk of Barristan Selmy. There's no mention of Tyrion's former marriage. The possible conflicting goals of the Baratheon brothers is ignored. They're both in rebellion, is how they're treated. But Tywin does wonder as to the value of Varys, Pycelle and Baelish. He does also announce that they'll be headed to Harrenhal. And Tywin specifically appoints Tyrion the Hand of the King. And that I read the book carefully, and that's not what happens in the book. He tells him to go and rule.
Right, yeah.
But in the TV show, he appoints him Hand of the King.
I'm not sure that the Warden of the West and Lord of Casterly Rock, as powerful as he is, can just appoint someone Hand of the King.
If the king doesn't agree, he can take him over his knee and give him a
right.
hard spank, being the grandfather thereof.
Right.
We even get the scene. the last paragraph of the chapter is Tyrion and Shay, and we even
Right.
get that scene in the book. In fact,
Okay.
sorry, in the TV show, it's actually quite expanded because Tyrion says, "I can't take you to King's Landing," which is not what he says in the book. In the book, he's like,
No.
"I'm going to take you to King's Landing despite what my father said." In the show, he's willing to comply with the things, but Shay argues with him and bosses him around, and eventually he capitulates and says, all right. And basically, Shay is sort of like amped up in the TV show. They give her more.
Yeah.
She gets
Right.
more screen time than she does in the book, which is all to the good, I say. Yeah. And she's just a better character in the TV show, to be honest.
Yeah. More dynamic.
Yeah. So pedantry, you go first on pedantry. I'm curious what you've got here.
Well, so twice in this chapter, both Tyrion and Harry Swift refer to the area where the battle between Jaime and his men and the Northern Force happened as Whispering Wood. But that area was dubbed the Whispering Wood because of the battle that happened at that location. It wasn't always called the Whispering Wood. So I've did the messenger come and be like, oh, we dubbed a cool new name for that wood. We're calling it the Whispering Wood. So
we couldn't keep the Siege of Riverrun going, but let me tell you what we did do.
We came up with a really cool nickname for the area where the battle happened and your son was taken hostage.
Yeah, but never mind that. The Battle of the Whispering Wood.
Yeah,
pretty
focus
cool.
on that.
So in the notes you have in quotes, "Oh, we dubbed Wood cool new name." I thought this was like a tongue twister or something. I was like, what the heck are you talking about? "Oh, we dubbed Wood cool new name." So my pedantry on this one is not really pedantry. It's just, and this was actually a slight difference between the TV show. At no time in the TV show does Peter Dinklage act like he's not happy with what he's hearing from his father. Twice in the book, he reacts to Tywin. First, when Tywin says, "They have my son," and Tyrion's like, "I'm sitting right here,"
Right.
And the second time when he thinks he's given Jaime up for dead.
Yeah.
And neither of those things happen in the TV show. At no point does Peter Dinklage act like he's put out by the things that Tywin is saying. And I just wonder if he's being just a little bit precious. I mean, obviously, Tywin isn't a great guy and a bit hard-hearted, but his motivation for the things he does here could be honest and true. I mean, yes, he might say, "They have one of my sons." That would be nicer.
Yeah. But you might not be thinking clearly and just be like, "They have my son." That doesn't mean they have my only son.
That's exactly what he said to Jaime when he was talking about Lisa Arryn.
Right.
"She has my son."
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just minor, that one, but it's actually not against the book. It's just against Tyrion's character. I think he should let up on his father on that one.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from there.
News and notes. Do we have any news and notes, McKelly?
We do indeed. I'm glad you asked. So we got a few emails this past week or so. We got a message from Sloan. And she actually sent this message a couple weeks ago, but I held it for this particular chapter because she asked why we think Kevin Lannister seems fond of Tyrion when Tywin seems to dislike him so much. Now, in this chapter, he disliked him a little less than usual. And she was wondering our thoughts on whether Kevin could possibly be Tyrion's father, even though she admits to having no evidence to support that possibility.
Well, I mean, I definitely think it's possible to like one's nephew without having sired one's nephew.
Yes. You finish.
I didn't really have much more to say than that, McKelly. Honestly, that was kind of the end of the road for that thought.
Well, I thought, and this is what I responded back to Sloan. I think Kevin can see Tyrion more clearly for his benefits, for the positives about him. He can see that Tyrion is intelligent and capable
and unfortunate, unlucky.
Yeah. I think Tywin is when he sees Tyrion, it's shadowed by the fact that it was Tyrion's birth that caused the death of his beloved Joanna, his wife.
Yeah.
And I think every time he looks at Tyrion, he might think,
reminded.
I would trade you for Joanna
For her.
in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
You know? But also there's probably some embarrassment that someone as powerful and such a big character in Westeros has a dwarf son, and that's probably something that bothers
I think that's enough. I don't think we need Sloane spreading rumors about Tyrion's birthright. I think because what you said there makes perfect sense to me. I mean, like Tywin can't get past what Tyrion is and what Tyrion did inadvertently. Kevin sees an unfortunate child who he's fond of and who's smart and fun to be around.
Right. Yeah. We also got an email from Jenny, and she mentioned that did we consider that the Hound possibly saved Sansa from a terrible fate by stepping between her and Joffrey when she was considering pushing Joffrey?
Oh, not saving Joffrey, but saving Sansa.
Sansa, right. Because of Cersei's wrath or Tywin's wrath or whoever, someone's wrath, probably likely Cersei's wrath. Now, Sansa thinks before she does it, if I fell to my death while pushing him, that wouldn't be the worst thing. But she doesn't think, if I don't die, I'm going to be in some serious trouble. So.
Yes. That's hot water right there.
Yes.
And how was your day? Well, I pushed your son off the battlements.
I killed the king. Mm-hmm. And
then I had lemon cakes.
That's right. She said she also loves the descriptions of the Vale and the Eyrie, as I do.
Oh, well. A kindred spirit there, McKenna.
That's right.
And I'll put out a general thanks to the people who contacted us to notice that when we published the Sansa 6 episode, we gave it the title Daenerys 9, which was unfortunate. But
who did that? What a dummy.
Since you do all the work, it's really very cruel of me to point out the flaws.
It was because I was uploading it while we were talking after the Daenerys 9 episode.
Yes.
So I just wrote Daenerys 9 down there.
We don't normally do that. We don't normally record on the day we publish a different episode. Right. And so I totally understood how it happened. Anyway, let's conclude. The Western Lords were pretty much ready to broker peace with Robb. Were it not for Joffrey, this could all have been behind us. We could have peace in the realm right now.
Right. Wrap this book up. One book.
Yeah. Can you imagine? It wouldn't be a great ending, though. Joffrey ruling the Seven Kingdoms. That's not really what I want. How I want the book to end. But
we were talking in the last Sansa chapter about if she followed things far enough back, she might get to the realization that a lot of her troubles were her own doing. And I was thinking, if Tywin followed the trail back far enough, he might discover the same thing. He started the fighting in the Riverlands by sending the Mountain in on raiding parties to provoke Edmure to spread his men thin so that then he could have prepare for an easy sweep of the Riverlands strongholds. If he hadn't been messing around doing that, he could possibly have come to King's Landing and guided Joff and Cersei in the way that he wanted them to be guided. Handle Ned the way he would have wanted Ned to have been handled.
Very interesting. But then there's a lot of people could get blamed here. I mean, if
right.
Tyrion had been there, he could have been doing what Tywin has now asked him to do. If Jaime hadn't run off to the Riverlands.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, one person who I have faith in their ability to control Joff would be Tywin. If it wasn't Tywin, yes. I would think it would be Cersei. Clearly, that's not working.
Well, I think she can. I just think she thinks that he's making good decisions, apart from the one she disagrees with. I don't think Cersei wants to curb him. I think she thinks his excesses are acceptable. I think Tyrion and Tywin are of a mind where we need to stop that boy from acting on his impulses. Cersei is more of the opinion, his impulses are fine.
Well, yeah, except
he's
for that
she
hasn't told him about Renly yet because she's afraid he's going to ride off with the Gold Cloaks and leave the city barren of defenses. So she's not entirely okay with his impulse control issues.
Well, yes, okay. She has learned to her cost to not entirely trust, but until he chopped Ned's head off, she was fine with his actions and behaviour.
Seems like it, yeah.
Now she's like, you know what? I should perhaps curb the flow of information to that child.
I need to get my dad down here stat.
Exactly.
We didn't mention this, but Tywin says that Cersei has commanded him to come to King's Landing to help.
That's right. He didn't like that.
No, he didn't. He mentions in italics, commanded.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just saying a lot of these troubles, Tywin, he started the stew. He started heating the stew of his own issues here.
Yeah. So Tyrion's stock is on the rise, partly perhaps because Tywin has given up Jaime for dead, or partly because Tyrion has earned it. I think honestly it's a combination of the both.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
I think if Jaime was there, Tywin might well send Jaime back to King's Landing to try and bring them to, but he isn't.
Right.
So he sends Tyrion instead.
Yeah, I think it's fairly split. He seems to be warming to Tyrion. The chapter started with Tyrion being offended that he said, "They have my son." Like he was being slighted, like he wasn't even Tywin's son. The chapter ended with Tywin sending him, Tyrion, to King's Landing to rule. So,
yeah.
You know.
So I have a question for you here.
Okay.
Which is, if the North had spies at that meeting, now the Western Lords have decided that they can't even. There's no point even asking for peace now because of the Ned situation.
Right.
But if the Northern Lords had spies at that meeting, knowing that the Western Lords were desperate to sue for peace but can't see a way to do it, would the Northern Lords come up with a peace deal to get out of this mess? Because it's a mess for everybody, let's be honest.
Yeah. I think they would very strongly consider it. I think Kat would be pushing hard for it because she wants her daughters back.
Yeah.
But, I think they would, so in this chapter, Leo Lefford, who's the Lord of Golden Tooth, he suggests that they ransom for Jaime at whatever cost, and Tyrion kind of scoffs. He rolls his eyes and said, if they want gold, they can melt Jaime's armor. But you can ransom for more than just gold, ransom with concessions, like hit them everywhere it hurts, but you can still work out a deal.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Although strategically the girls aren't as important as Jaime, in Kat's eyes, they're as important as Jaime.
Yes, exactly.
So if you could, in return for Jaime, you could get the girls back. You could get independence for the North. Maybe the North becomes its own kingdom again, like it used to be.
Right.
You get maybe Joffrey Baratheon has to take the black.
Right. She's got another son.
Yeah. And then, that's right. Tommen becomes king. And then 10,000 gold coins,
Yeah. You would think that a lot of... first of all, got to remember that Robb is 15. So his mother might have a lot of sway over him still.
Exactly, yeah.
She wants those girls back.
And he himself would want the girls back.
Sure, yeah.
There's only so much you can do with Jaime Lannister.
You can only kill him once.
Right. He's a mouth to feed,
Right, yeah.
He's only a bargaining chip if you're willing to trade him.
Right. Otherwise, he's just like a trophy.
Just nothing, really. Yeah, a trophy, exactly, yeah. And I'm very curious to see how Shay will fit in at court.
Yeah, and, what do you think? Did he decide to bring her because he's that fond of her? There's got to be plenty of other women in King's Landing that he could attach himself to. Or was it done simply to spite his father because his father specifically said, don't bring her to court?
I think there's a book-show difference there. I think in the book, it's to spite his father.
Right.
I think in the TV show, you've clearly found that he's getting very fond of her, and he can't stand to be apart from her now. And then the other person who's going to be quite the splash at court, I think, is Shagger.
Definitely going to be interesting. I want to see him dressed in his finest at a At a meal in the Great Hall.
Yeah, I think the new Hand of the King should have a tourney.
Right, yes.
All right, let's wind this up. As always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thanks to McKelly.
And if you like what we're doing, please consider going out and leaving us a 5-star rate and a really nice review. We'd very much appreciate that. It would really help us get the word out about the show.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.